Growing up, I always felt like the second choice, a shadow to my older brother, Michael. My name is Emma, and from as early as I can remember, my parents lavished Michael with unending attention, showering him with opportunities one could only dream of. While he basked in their adoration, I learned to navigate the world on my own, unnoticed. The disparity in how they treated us was painfully obvious, like day and night. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table, bent over my homework, while Mom and Dad whisked Michael away to his latest singing competition or club meeting. Michael is 3 years older, they would say, as if that alone justified the endless investment in his every interest. Whenever his teachers hinted at even the smallest talent, my parents jumped at the chance to nurture it, spending money we didn't really have on lessons, competitions, and the finest equipment. Michael has such a beautiful voice, Mom would gush, her eyes sparkling as she spoke to anyone who would listen. He's going to be something special one day. Meanwhile, I learned early not to ask for much. When I timidly expressed interest in art classes, Mom gave me an apologetic smile. "Maybe next semester, honey," she said. "Michael's voice lessons are taking up the budget right now." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment, knowing there would never be a next semester for me. The imbalance became even more glaring during Michael's senior year of high school. I was 15 then, sitting quietly at the dinner table as my parents made a life-changing announcement. "We've been saving up," Dad said with pride. "Michael, we're sending you to Preston College. It's one of the most prestigious schools in the state." Michael's face lit up with excitement. "Really? That's amazing. And that's not all," Mom added, her voice warm and full of love. "You'll stay in our apartment near campus, no rent, of course. We want you to focus entirely on your studies." I pushed the peas around on my plate, trying to swallow my disappointment along with my dinner. Not that it mattered. No one was looking at me anyway. All eyes were on Michael as he eagerly discussed his future plans, glowing with confidence. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the realization hit me hard. If they were spending all this on Michael's education, there would be nothing left for me. My future wasn't even a consideration. But instead of crying, I started planning. The very next day, I paid a visit to my grandparents' antique store. The familiar scent of aged wood and old books greeted me as I stepped inside. My grandfather, always observant, noticed the determination in my eyes. "Well, Emma," he said, after listening to my story, "I could just give you the money for college, but where's the lesson in that? How about you earn it instead? Work here after school, and I'll help you save." And so it began. While Michael packed his bags for Preston College, I rolled up my sleeves and dove into work at the antique store. Every afternoon, I cataloged items, assisted customers, and soaked up knowledge about the treasures we sold. My grandmother would bring me snacks and share fascinating stories about the vintage pieces. When I told my parents about my job, their reaction spoke volumes. Relief. Gratitude. As if I had solved a problem for them. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. Each afternoon spent dusting old furniture, and organizing vintage jewelry brought me closer to my goal. By the time I graduated high school, I had saved enough for college on my own. There was no grand celebration for my achievements, just a quiet dinner at home. But I didn't mind. For the first time, I felt an undeniable sense of pride. I enrolled at the local state college, choosing a business program that was both practical and affordable. It wasn't Preston College, and there was no free apartment waiting for me, but it was mine. I had earned it. Savings from my job at the antique store had allowed me to afford tuition, and the reasonable rates at the local state college left me with some money to spare. Living at home and taking the bus to campus wasn't glamorous, but it made financial sense. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table, I cautiously broached the subject. "Mom, Dad," I began, trying to sound casual, "I've been thinking about getting a used car. It would make getting to classes a lot easier." Dad barely glanced up from his phone. "Sorry, Emma. We just don't have the money for that right now." Mom chimed in, her tone dismissive. "The bus system is perfectly fine, honey. Lots of students use it." I bit my tongue, swallowing the sting of their indifference. Memories of them eagerly helping Michael get his license and even pitching in for his first car flashed through my mind. But that was ancient history, and I had long learned to let such moments pass without protest. My first year of college flew by in a blur of lectures, exams, and part-time shifts at a local cafe. As I wrapped up my spring finals, the house erupted into a frenzy of excitement. Michael was graduating from Preston College, and Mom and Dad were throwing an elaborate celebration in his honor. Our house was transformed into a scene out of a lifestyle magazine. Relatives, friends, and neighbors filled every corner, their chatter and laughter reverberating through the walls. I stayed in the kitchen, arranging trays of appetizers and doing my best to remain invisible. Michael made his grand entrance, with a stunning blonde woman on his arm. Sarah, his college girlfriend, was as radiant as a movie star. Together, they commanded the room with an effortless charisma that had everyone's attention. "Everyone," Michael announced, his voice booming with confidence. "Sarah and I have some exciting news. We're engaged." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Mom burst into tears of joy, clutching her chest like she'd just won the lottery. Dad clapped Michael on the back so enthusiastically that I thought he might knock him over. But Sarah wasn't finished. She smiled sweetly, her voice laced with excitement. "After the wedding, we'll be moving to Connecticut. My parents own a successful business there, and they want us to take it over." Mom's sobs intensified. "My baby boy, a successful businessman," she cried. "That's my son." Dad beamed with pride, his voice thick with emotion. "Always knew you were destined for greatness." I lingered in the corner, unnoticed as usual. Nobody mentioned my 4.0 GPA or the fact that I was working part-time while balancing a full college course load. I didn't expect them to. By now, I was used to being a spectator in my own family. The months leading up to Michael and Sarah's wedding were consumed by endless planning and excitement. Mom and Dad threw themselves into creating the perfect day for their perfect son. They took out a substantial loan to cover the costs, everything from the lavish venue and gourmet catering to the breathtaking floral arrangements and live band. Nothing was too good for Michael and Sarah. I focused on my studies, now in my third year of college, while the rest of the household buzzed with wedding fever. Invitations were sent, fittings were scheduled, and endless conversations revolved around the event. When the big day finally arrived, it was everything you'd expect: extravagant, emotional, and entirely centered on Michael. As a bridesmaid, I stood dutifully by Sarah's side in a dress I had to pay for myself, watching my parents beam with pride as they danced with the happy couple. They're eating all my food, using utilities I pay for, and even as I admired the spectacle, I couldn't ignore the financial strain it had put on my family. They'd spared no expense, knowing full well they'd be paying off the loan for years to come. After Michael and Sarah left for Connecticut to start their new life, the house felt unusually quiet. One evening, as I sat in my cramped bedroom surrounded by textbooks, an idea struck me. The apartment where Michael had lived during college was now vacant. It was perfectly located near campus, offering an opportunity for me to finally gain some independence. Independence was something I had earned with hard work and sacrifice, but it seemed my family had other plans. "Mom, Dad," I began cautiously one evening, "since Michael's apartment is empty now, would it be okay if I moved in there? It's closer to campus and would give me some space to focus." They exchanged a glance, the kind of silent conversation that spoke volumes. Finally, Mom broke the silence. "Well, honey, you can move in, but you'll need to pay rent." Her words hit me like a slap in the face.
"Rent?"
But Michael lived there for free. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his recliner, avoiding eye contact. "That was different. We've got the wedding loan to pay off now, and we need the extra income." I felt my chest tighten with frustration. "I'm your daughter, too. I've never asked you for anything. I worked to pay for my own college. I take the bus everywhere." Mom cut me off, raising a hand. "Fine," she said after a moment of deliberation. "We'll charge you half the normal rent." It wasn't fair, and I wanted to fight harder, but I knew this was the best offer I'd get. "Okay, I'll take it," I said quietly. That weekend, I moved into the apartment, but it didn't feel like mine. Michael's presence lingered everywhere, holes in the walls where his posters once hung, water rings on the coffee table from his late-night study sessions. To make ends meet, I took extra shifts at the cafe, often working until closing. My life became a cycle of classes, work, and sleepless nights. By the time my final year of college ended, I barely had the energy to feel proud. Graduation day came and went without much fanfare. My parents hosted a simple dinner at home, inviting only my grandparents. We sat around the dining table, eating lasagna I had made myself. Grandma reached across the table, her warm hand enveloping mine. "Emma dear, we're so proud of you," she said, her eyes shining. "Graduating with highest honors while working part-time, that's an incredible achievement." Before I could respond, Mom's phone buzzed. Her face lit up as she read the message. "Oh, speaking of achievements," she interrupted, "Michael just texted. The business is doing wonderfully. They're expanding into 2 new locations." My graduation dinner quickly turned into yet another celebration of Michael's success. Grandma and Grandpa exchanged knowing looks, and Grandpa gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. 2 weeks later, I started my dream job at Anderson and Mitchell, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. The salary was better than I had dared to hope for, and I felt like I was finally stepping into my own future. That excitement lasted exactly 3 days. "Emma," Mom said during one of her surprise visits to the apartment, "now that you're making good money, you should start paying the full rent amount." I stared at her, disbelief tightening my throat. "But we agreed on half." "That was when you were a student," she replied matter-of-factly. "You can afford it now." I wanted to argue, to point out the unfairness of the situation, but I had learned that such battles were pointless. Reluctantly, I agreed. 3 years passed in relative stability. I earned a promotion at work, but I kept the news and the accompanying raise to myself. I'd learned that any hint of financial success would only lead to more demands. Then came the phone call that turned my life upside down. "Emma," Mom's voice was tight with tension, "we need to talk about your brother. There's been some trouble. The business that's gone bankrupt. He had a fight with Sarah's parents, and they're furious about how he managed things. They're not speaking anymore." I closed my eyes, already sensing where this was heading. "He's coming back home," Mom continued, "with Sarah and the baby." "Oh," I said carefully, "I assume he'll be staying with you and Dad's?" There was a pause, and then she dropped the bombshell. "Actually, that apartment you're in is quite large. He'll be staying there." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "What?" "Mom, this is my home. I've been living here for years." "Don't be dramatic, Emma," she said sharply. "Your brother needs help. He doesn't have any money right now, so he'll stay there for free. You can keep paying the rent." "That's absurd," I protested. "If he's moving in, maybe I should find my own place." "Don't you dare." Mom's voice turned icy. "We need your rent money, now more than ever. Michael's going through a rough time. You wouldn't want to make things harder for him, would you?" Michael, Sarah, and their baby moved in the following week, and my life descended into chaos. My bedroom was cleared out to make way for the baby's nursery, and I was relegated to the couch in the living room. "Don't be selfish, Emma," Mom had said when I protested. "Your brother has a baby. Babies need proper rooms." The apartment, once my sanctuary, became a war zone of dirty dishes, scattered toys, and constant arguments. I worked late most nights just to avoid going home. Michael stormed off after our conversation, retreating to his room, my old room. He slammed the door behind him, and I stood there, frozen in disbelief. My words lingered in the air. "Your experience running a business into the ground." It felt satisfying in the moment, but quickly soured as I realized that things were never going to change. Michael was never going to take responsibility for his failures. 3 months into this forced cohabitation, my life was spiraling out of control. I sat at my kitchen table, trying to get some work done, but the space was barely functional. The table was now a battlefield of Tommy's dried baby food and Sarah's coffee rings, a constant reminder of how little respect my space was given. As I reviewed my bank statements, the numbers didn't lie. My expenses had doubled. Michael and his family weren't contributing at all to the household, and it was taking a serious toll. I took a deep breath, determined to stay calm as I rehearsed what I would say to my parents. I had to confront them about the living situation once and for all. Mom, Dad, I began when they picked up, my voice steady but tense. We need to talk about the living situation. Michael and Sarah aren't contributing anything to the household expenses. Before I could finish, Mom's voice cut me off, sharp and disapproving. I can't believe how selfish you're being, Emma. Your brother lost everything. His in-laws betrayed him. He has a baby to take care of. Dad's voice joined in the background. You should be grateful you're in a position to help family. That's just it. I pressed on, trying to stay rational despite the frustration building inside me. I'm not just helping. I'm carrying the entire financial burden. They don't buy groceries. They don't help enough. Mom interrupted again. Your brother is going through a difficult time. This isn't forever. You need to be more understanding. I hung up the phone feeling a sickening sense of helplessness. But the conversation had given me the push I needed. It was clear my parents would never see the situation from my side. That night, I opened my laptop and began searching for apartments. I bookmarked several promising options, all within walking distance of my office. Just in case, I told myself as a form of reassurance. Just in case things got worse. And deep down, I knew they would. 2 weeks later, I was sitting on the couch, my bed, trying to focus on work documents while Tommy wailed in the background. Michael and Sarah were having their fourth argument of the day. The doorbell rang, and my parents walked in without waiting for anyone to answer. Emma, Mom announced, her voice sharp. We need to discuss the rent. I looked up from my laptop, already knowing what was coming. I had paid this month's rent on time. No surprises there. Yes, but starting next month, we're doubling it, Mom declared. The room fell silent. Even Tommy stopped crying, sensing the tension in the air.
Double?
I asked, my voice a mix of disbelief and outrage. But I'm already paying the full market rate. Mom gestured around the apartment. Well, now there are more people living here. More wear and tear on the property, more utilities being used. It's only fair that the rent reflects that. Fair? I laughed bitterly. How is it fair that I should pay double rent for being forced to sleep on a couch in my own living room? If anyone should pay more, it should be Michael. He's not paying anything. Michael jumped up from his chair, his face flushed with indignation. This is ridiculous. I lost everything, and now you want me to pay rent? Of course not, sweetie, Mom soothed, turning back to me with a harder expression. Emma, you have a good job. You can afford this. Your brother needs time to get back on his feet. I stared at them all, Mom's stern expectation, Dad's awkward avoidance, Michael's entitled indignation, and Sarah's smug satisfaction. In that moment, I realized how much I had tolerated and how much I had given up. 3 months of built-up frustration threatened to explode, but instead, I swallowed it down. I had no choice. Fine, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Double rent starting next month. Mom's face broke into a satisfied smile. She and Dad left shortly after, clearly pleased with how smoothly their announcement had gone. They had no idea that in that moment, they had given me the final push I needed. That evening, while I tried to read a book on my uncomfortable couch bed, I overheard Michael and Sarah in the kitchen. They thought they were whispering, but their excitement was evident. I told you it would work out, Sarah said, her voice barely audible. Once Emma pays double rent, we'll be set. The apartment's big enough for all of us to stay here for a while. Michael's response was full of smugness. I knew she wouldn't say no. She's been supporting me this whole time. Why stop now? I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. This is what they think of me. The realization was like a fire that lit inside me, and for the first time in years, I felt something, determined, sure, and ready to fight back.
It was time to take control of my life.
As I lay there in my bed, gripping my book tightly, I could hear Sarah's voice rising above the clatter in the kitchen. Careless. Can you believe it? She giggled, her voice dripping with delight. Your mom just told me they're going to give us half of Emma's rent money, every month. Michael's smug reply made my blood boil. Of course they are. They understand we need help right now. Emma makes plenty of money. She can support us for a while. This is perfect. Sarah's voice continued, her tone full of satisfaction. We get to live here for free, and we'll even have spending money. Your sister doesn't need to know. I lay there, the blood pounding in my ears. All this time, I thought my parents were just being unfair, trying to force me to be more understanding of Michael's situation. But now I understood it all. This wasn't just a case of them enabling Michael. This was a calculated scheme. They weren't just asking for help. They were actively planning to use me to fund his laziness. Gripping the edges of my book, I felt my knuckles turn white. I had always tried to help, tried to be understanding. But this was manipulation, pure and simple. It was time for change. Without hesitation, I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the apartment listings I had bookmarked. One caught my eye, a modern one-bedroom in a quiet building, closer to my office than my current apartment. The rent was exactly what I had been paying before the proposed increase. This was my opportunity. I called the number immediately, my voice low, trying to keep my growing excitement in check. Hi, I'm interested in the apartment on Cedar Street. Is it still available? I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Yes, of course. Would you like to come see it now? The voice on the other end replied. Perfect. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The apartment was everything I had hoped for, clean, quiet, and Michael-free. I signed the lease on the spot, paying the security deposit with my emergency savings. I could already feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. Back at my old apartment, I waited until everyone was asleep before quietly packing my essential belongings into 2 large suitcases. I left behind the furniture. It wasn't worth the hassle, and I could easily buy new pieces that didn't come with memories of this mess. The next morning, I wheeled my suitcases toward the door, ready to leave the nightmare behind. Michael sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through job listings he had no intention of applying to. Going somewhere? He asked, barely glancing up. Month-long business trip, I lied smoothly, keeping my voice calm. Big project in our Cincinnati office. He just grunted in reply, already uninterested in my departure. I moved into my new apartment that evening, ordering takeout, and sitting on the floor of my empty living room. The silence was beautiful. There were no crying babies, no arguing couple, and no guilt-tripping parents. Just peace. For the next month, I lived quietly in my new home. I bought a comfortable bed, a cozy couch that wasn't a bed, and kitchen supplies that only I would use. I cooked meals that stayed in my refrigerator until I ate them. I slept through the night without being awakened by Tommy's crying. My life was finally mine again. Then, just as I expected, my phone rang with my mother's number. Emma, she snapped without preamble. Why haven't you sent the full rent payment? We agreed on double, remember? I couldn't help but laugh, a laugh full of disbelief and triumph. Actually, Mom, I know all about your little arrangement with Michael and Sarah. Were you planning to tell me that half my rent money was going straight into their pockets? That's none of your business, she barked. Your brother needs... No, Mom, I interrupted, still chuckling. What my brother needs is to grow up and take responsibility for once in his life. I've moved out and found my own place. The apartment is all yours and Michael's now. You're welcome to it. What? She screeched. You can't do this. We need that rent money. Oh, I'm sure Michael will step up and start paying rent now that he's had time to get back on his feet, I said coolly. I can't wait to see how that works out for you. There was a moment of silence on the phone as the reality of the situation sank in. My family's reliable source of income was gone, and all they had left was their unemployed son who had never paid a bill in his life. Emma, sweetie, my mother's voice suddenly turned sugary sweet, a tone I recognized from childhood when she wanted something. Let's not be hasty. We can work something out. What if we go back to the original rent amount? That was fair, wasn't it? I settled deeper into my new couch, the one I had picked out myself, in my own apartment where no one could kick me out of my bedroom.
No, Mom.
That's not going to happen. But Emma, we're family, she pleaded. Family? I interrupted, my voice cold. Is that what you call it when you scheme behind my back to funnel my money to Michael? When you kick me out of my own bedroom while I'm paying all the bills? When you've spent my entire life treating me like an ATM while treating Michael like royalty. That's not fair. We've always... Goodbye, Mom. I hung up the phone, and, for the first time in my life, I blocked their numbers. That was 6 months ago. My grandparents keep me updated on the situation, though I never ask. They just know I need to hear it, need to know I made the right choice. According to them, Michael, Sarah, and Tommy are still living in the apartment. They haven't paid a single month's rent. My parents are covering all the utilities and giving them spending money because the baby needs things. My brother still hasn't found a job. Apparently, there just aren't enough executive positions available for failed businessmen with a track record of bankruptcy. My new life is peaceful. I got another promotion at work, bought myself a car, and started taking evening classes for my MBA. My apartment is always clean. My food stays in my fridge until I want to eat it. I sleep in my own bed every night. The other day, I ran into Sarah's cousin at the grocery store. She told me they're expecting another baby. I just smiled and wished them well, knowing that somewhere across town my parents are probably already figuring out how to pay for another nursery. But that's not my problem anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first, and it feels absolutely right.